Peter Hayashida, who we all know and love and whose name is really not that difficult, has been at UCLA in a variety of roles from student to assistant vice chancellor over the past 26 years. He's been an advocate, leader, and outstanding role model for LGBT students, faculty, and staff at UCLA. Peter leaves us in a few weeks to become the vice chancellor at UC Riverside. And while we're sad for us, we're thrilled for him. I've asked him to present our Distinguished Service to the LGBT Community Award by a UCLA alumnus, which was the award he received last year. And he will present it to his friend and our hero, Dustin Lance Black. Peter.
Thank you, Ronnie. I am thrilled to be here, not just because I've been thrilled to be at every single one of these that I've come to, but because today represents a very special occasion for me. As Ronnie indicated a few minutes ago, this is her last Lavender graduation. This is my last Lavender graduation, at least as a member of the staff of UCLA. And as I sit and reflect back on the 26 years I've been in Westwood, which makes me a little bit queasy to say, looking at this group down here. But I think about the four chancellors with whom I've had the privilege of working, Chuck Young, Al Carnesale, Norman Abrams, and Gene Block. And I will tell you that one of the things that has made this such a remarkably safe and supportive home for me has been the continuity of support and encouragement I've received from these four chief executives, not just professionally as in their continual support and commitment to diversity, but also personally in the ways that they've encouraged me and allowed many of us here at UCLA to realize our dreams and our aspirations. The expansion of resources for the LGBT community on this campus in the 26 years I've been here have been remarkable. And I want to thank and recognize Ronnie and Emily and everybody else who makes that possible, and certainly Lynn for her leadership in student affairs, because it is a very different experience being here today, and that's a good thing. So today is this month actually represents the 40th anniversary of Stonewall, and it's an important time to stop, well, besides the parties and the parade, it's an important time to stop and actually recognize and think about the people who fought our civil rights struggle before us, and whose spirits live on, some of whom who are still here, actually, and some of whom who are not, the activists, the teachers, the philanthropists, the storytellers. Today, I have the honor of welcoming home someone who is actually all of these and more. He's more because he's also a great Bruin. And he revived the story of another great civil rights leader that really has caught our attention and our hearts over the course of the last few months. And I'm going to do the formal introduction of Dustin Lance Black as provided by his publicity people. Thank you very much. And then I'm going to add some color commentary at the end. Dustin Lance Black graduated with honors from UCLA School of Theater, Film, and Television in 1996. He began his professional career as an art director on commercials and quickly transitioned to directing documentaries, television series, commercials, and music videos. His first two documentaries, On the Bus in 2001 and My Life with Count Dracula in 2003, both debuted to acclaim and subsequent festival success. The success of these two projects, coupled with Lance's narrative short film Something Close to Heaven, led to a successful stint producing, directing, and writing TLC's program Faking It. In 2004, Lance signed on to draw on his devout Mormon childhood experiences in San Antonio, Texas, as a writer on HBO's Emmy and Golden Globe-nominated polygamous drama Big Love. He recently wrapped the third season of the series, in which he also served as co-producer. Lance penned a story and screenplay for Pedro about the life and legacy of famed real-world cast member Pedro Zamora. The film premiered at the 2008 Toronto International Film Festival and debuts on MTV this spring. During his work on Big Love, Lance often traveled to San Francisco, where he spent many years as a teenager to research the life of Harvey Milk, the first openly gay man elected to a major public office. Milk's message of hope led Lance to pen his screenplay for Milk, starring Academy Award winner Sean Penn, Academy Award nominee Josh Brolin, UCLA alumnus James Franco, and Emil Hirsch. The film was released by Focus Features in November 2008 to tremendous critical acclaim, receiving 8 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture of the Year. Lance won the 2008 Academy Award and Writers Guild of America Award for Best Screenplay, Original Screenplay for Milk. Lance has begun pre-production on his feature directorial debut, What's Wrong with Virginia, a drama that stars Liam Neeson and Jennifer Connelly. In addition, Lance and Milk director Gus Van Sant will re-team for Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test, an adaptation of the celebrated Tom Wolfe novel set up at Fox Searchlight. Now, let me tell you what happened on that evening when the Academy Awards program was going on this year. They were getting up to the Screenplay Award. I was folding clothes in the bedroom. My husband was in the kitchen and heard me scream and came running into the bedroom. In 1994, I'm going to jump around here, but you got to follow really closely. In 1994, I was a program manager at the Alumni Association running the Alumni Scholarship Program. And a young man from Pasadena City College transferred to UCLA as a Lou and Edie Wasserman Scholar and started what would be an amazing adventure. And Dustin Lance Black walked into the office, this skinny, blonde, floppy-haired kid who was amazingly sweet, incredibly thoughtful, quiet but fierce, and demonstrating a maturity and a leadership so far beyond most of his peers that he immediately caught the attention and the hearts of all of us who worked with that program. I keep saying Lance because I called him Dustin then. But Lance really demonstrated for us what it meant to be an active learner, to be a devoted member of the community, to be not just a participant in life, but someone who sets an example for others, and someone whose passion and dreams served as an inspiration for himself, for others, and eventually led him to do the things he loves in a way that the rest of the world recognized immediately as the kind of talent that can move our movement forward. As we've watched the events unfold over the last 9 months or so, I've thought of him a lot. The impact that Milk has had on the consciousness of the American people, the way in which it has moved us to identify a new generation of leaders. The tired old activists of us are ready to pass the torch on to some new folks, and the people who have emerged in the course of the demonstrations and the outcry about the deprivation of our civil rights in California has been amazing. So for that, I will be forever grateful to Dustin Lance Black for his leadership. And it is a special honor for me, having been the surprise recipient last year of the Distinguished Service to the LGBT Community Award, to recognize one of our greatest alumni, Dustin Lance Black, for his work and for his commitment.
Thank you for having me here today. This is quite a return. So yes, my name is Dustin Lance Black, but all of my friends and family, my mom call me Lance, so please feel free to do the same. And yes, I did. I grew up in a very conservative Mormon household in San Antonio, Texas. I'll tell you a little story about all that. When you grow up in a Mormon house in Texas, you learn a few words, and the early ones I learned growing up were unholy, unnatural, unworthy. Then there was this really, really long word that they like to use in church a lot, and they usually used it like this. Homosexuality is sin. Next to the crime of murder comes the sin of sexual impurity. And I was 5 years old when I first heard that word, and I thought, wow, how exciting. I mean, as a future writer, I guess it's not surprising that I really always fell in love with big words, even if I didn't know what they meant. And this was a great one, homosexual. And then I'm from Texas, and I'm also in the military, so that means I get a whole slew of other words, including things like faggot, fruit, gay wad, homo, fairy, and pansy, and others that I won't say here today. And then one Sunday, like a parrot in a pet store, one of those choice words fell out of my mouth and landed with a thud amongst a group of very conservative Christian women. And the lecture that followed was quite the revelation to a 5-year-old who knew that people did any of those sorts of things. But from her tone of voice and the look on her face, it was quickly apparent that the homo club was not the place for the cool kids. And you have to understand, I come from, a working class family, I come from a poor family. So a year later, when I looked at that boy down the street who had just stolen this toy car of mine, it was my one toy car, And he's walking away, and my heart started to race, and I stopped breathing through my nose, and then I stopped breathing altogether. And you know, it wasn't because I wanted to beat him up. It was because I wanted to kiss him. And it was my first crush. And it was at that moment that I knew for sure that all those wicked words were about me. I was right down there with the sinners and the murderers and the rapists, all 3 foot 4 inches of me at 6 years old. That's right, I knew from the age of 6 what people would call me if they ever discovered my secret. I knew that I was going to hell. I knew that God did not love me, and I knew that I was less than, and that if anyone did find out, beyond suffering physical harm, I knew that I would bring great shame to myself and to my family. And so I had 2 choices. One, I could hide. I could go on a Mormon mission. I could start a small Mormon family of, say, 20, 30, or 40 kids. Or to do what I thought about constantly, which was to take my own life. And thankfully, there are enough pills in a Mormon mother's cabinet to do the job. So I pretended, and I hid, and I cried myself to sleep on more Sabbath nights than I care to remember. But then, somewhere around the summer of 1988, I heard a speech. It was delivered on June 9th, 1978, by Mr. Harvey Milk. And I want to read you a piece of that speech. He said, somewhere in Des Moines or San Antonio, there is a young gay person who all of a sudden realizes that she or he is gay, knows that if the parent finds out, they'll be tossed out of the house, the classmates will taunt the child, and the Anita Bryants and John Bergs are doing their bit on TV, and that child has several options. Staying in the closet, suicide. And then one day, that child might open up the paper and it says, homosexual elected in San Francisco. And there are 2 new options. One option is to go to California or stay in San Antonio and fight. You've got to elect gay people so that that young child and the thousands upon thousands like that child know there is hope for a better world. There is hope for a better tomorrow. I was almost 14 when I heard that speech for the first time, and that was the first moment that I knew, that I really knew that someone loved me for me. From the grave, 10 years after his assassination, Harvey's message gave me life. Harvey's message gave me hope. But then the question is, why spend 5 years, writing Milk, right? My career was in a good place, and everyone said, no, don't do it. This is going to hurt your career. This is going to be bad for you. But I did it because when I would bring his name up in groups of friends, and these are gay friends, these are politically active friends, and I'd bring his name up, and they would nod like they knew they should know who he was, but they had absolutely no clue. And why is that dangerous? It's dangerous because, as the saying goes, if you don't know your history, you are doomed to repeat it, and that's exactly what the gay and lesbian movement has been doing over the past decade. Harvey's message was simple: come out, represent yourself, and reach out to other minority groups. If you look at Proposition 8s in California this year, there were almost no gay people in the ads, almost none in the literature, and not enough effort was made to reach out and educate. So to me, it came as a little surprise that we lost that fight. And that is why I am here today. There is no question that we are at a critical moment in the gay and lesbian movement. The question is, what will we do with this moment? And winning this fight with all of us, is the most important thing in my life today. You see, what I discovered over my 3 years of Milk research trips wasn't the legend of the man that I grew up hearing as a teenager. What I discovered was a deeply flawed man. A man who grew up closeted, a man who failed in his business, he failed in his relationships, a man who got a very late start. But once he did get started, he wasn't afraid to ruffle feathers. He wasn't afraid to agitate. And by agitating, he convinced an entire people to reach out. All right. He was able to, by agitating, convince an entire people. And this isn't a time, he was very conservative. This isn't a time when it was still illegal to be gay. It was still considered a mental illness to be gay. And he convinced an entire people to come out of the closet, to reach out to other communities, and to represent themselves in the fight. And you know what? You know what Harvey did? Harvey Milk won twice on Election Day at the ballot box in a time that many people would consider far more homophobic. So let's... So this is why I think it's so important we look to him for a couple lessons, and I'm going to go over those as quick as I can. His first lesson is that Harvey's work did not stop with the gay and lesbian movement. He understood the interconnectedness of all minority groups in this fight for full equality. He understood that the LGBT movement is just one piece of a much larger, completely interrelated civil rights struggle, and he's in good company here. I want to quote Coretta Scott King, who said, "We have a lot more work to do in our common struggle against bigotry and discrimination." And I say common struggle because I believe very strongly that all forms of bigotry and discrimination are equally wrong and should be opposed by right-thinking Americans everywhere. Freedom from discrimination based on sexual orientation is surely a fundamental human right in any great democracy, as much as freedom from racial, religious, gender, or ethnic discrimination. And like Coretta Scott King, Harvey Milk understood this interconnectedness, and he didn't just understand it, he felt a genuine responsibility to any group that was being treated unequally. He worked hard for the seniors communities, the disabled, the women's movement, the racial minority movements, the religious communities, and all of the us's out there. Because he understood that the gay and lesbian rights will never be secure until all of our civil rights are secure, and that was perhaps his most important message, the coalition of the us's, that together we are unbeatable at the ballot box. And I firmly believe that it is time for the gay and lesbian movement to reach out again and work just as hard for our brothers and our sisters in other communities as we have for ourselves, and that is my first call to action for you today. So this whole step 2 thing. This past fall I tuned in, probably like everyone here, I tuned into the Democratic National Convention to see what was on, the progressive agenda. And just for some historical context, I want to read you something that was said back in 1972. Back in 1972, Jim Foster, an openly gay man, was given a slot in front of the entire Democratic National Convention, and on national television he said this. He said, "We do not come to you pleading your understanding or begging your tolerance. We come to you affirming our pride, affirming the validity to seek and maintain meaningful emotional relationships, and affirming our right to participate in the life of this country on an equal basis with every citizen." That was 1972. I think that's pretty damn brave. And 36 years later, what did I hear? Not much. Obama stumbled over a single sentence about our gay brothers and sisters and hospital visitation rights, and since then, there has been inaction and silence on DOMA and Don't Ask, Don't Tell. It's not exactly been a bold new move for civil rights. So I thought, are the Democrats afraid of what happened back in 2004 when so many Democrats say that the gay marriage issue cost the Democrats the White House? It sure sounds like it to me. But then I tuned in to the Republican National Convention, and there's Sarah Palin and John McCain in flashy patriotic speeches, right? And did you hear what they had to say about gay civil rights or gay people? No, because they said nothing. And at first I thought, well, maybe they're afraid now too, because in 2006 they used their anti-gay thing again, right? And it brought out more Democratic homophobes than Republican ones, and that did them more harm than good. But honestly, I have a deeper fear than that. I worry that perhaps they found a sure way to kill the gay and lesbian movement. They'll just make us disappear. They'll make us vanish. They'll make us invisible again. Reagan did it in the 80s with 6 years of silence about the AIDS crisis, because at the time it was believed that it was only killing gay people. And that brings me to Harvey's second belief about the LGBT movement. You see, one of the biggest challenges of the gay community has always been invisibility. Unlike the black movement and the women's movement, we are not always immediately identifiable. Some of my friends are. But people still go their entire careers without coming out to their coworkers or their family or even their grocery clerks or their neighbors. And this entire idea of coming out was devised for and pushed for by leaders like Harvey Milk back in 1978 as a way to counter this visibility problem, because he knew that if people did not personally know, they didn't personally know who they're hurting, that they don't mind taking away our civil rights on Election Day. And watching these two conventions and listening to the deafening silence since these conventions, I get the sinking feeling that the gay and lesbian movement is off the table for many. And I feel myself slowly vanishing. And for gay and lesbian people, invisibility equals death. Because you see, 30 years after Harvey Milk gave his life for the LGBT movement, I am still less than a heterosexual when it comes to my civil rights. If I fall in love with someone from a foreign country, I can't marry him and bring him home. I can't be out in the military. There are inheritance rights issues, pension rights issues, Social Security, hospital visitation, employment, and housing discrimination, and on and on. The message to gay and lesbian youth coming out today is that they are still less than, they are still inferior. And why is that? Why is that and things like this loss in California not just devastating politically and socially? Why is it so much more dangerous than that? Because I feel certain that there was a kid out there in San Antonio, Texas, tonight, who woke up on November 5th, 2008, and heard that once again gay and lesbian people lost their rights in California, that we are still less than, that we are still second-class citizens. And I know all too well the dire solutions that may have flashed through his or her head. And so do so many kids out there. Let me read you some statistics. These are things that I looked up when I was working on Milk. And it goes like this. 1 out of every 3 gay and lesbian kids seriously contemplates suicide. Gay and lesbian kids are 4 times more likely to attempt to take their life than their straight brothers and sisters, and 9 times more likely if they come from unaccepting homes. And for those who do come out, and survive, 26% are told to leave home when they do. And those are not statistics from 1978. Those are statistics from 2008. The religious right has claimed time and again that gay people threaten their families and threaten their children. But I am here today to say that the truth is that these kinds of hateful homophobic messages, this kind of hateful homophobic legislation is literally costing our world's children their lives. And that takes me to my big point. I think the thing I found to be universally true in my life, and I'm not alone here, I want to quote Julian Bond. He's a founding leader in the Black Civil Rights Movement, a great hero of mine, and now the head of the NAACP. And he said to me, he said, Lance, he said, good things do not come to those who wait. Good things come to those who agitate. And a Harvey Milk quote leapt to mind, and this is from a time when everyone was telling him no, and everyone was saying, don't do it, it'll be bad for you, it'll be bad for your business, you need to quiet down, you need to back off, it is not time for an openly gay elected official. And he said to them this, he said, masturbation can be fun, but it does not take the place of the real thing. It is about time that the gay community stopped playing with itself and get down to the real thing. And he said, there are people who are satisfied with crumbs because that is all they think they can get, when in reality, if they demand the real thing, they will find that they indeed can get it. So, what is the real thing today? What is the real thing for the LGBT movement? What do I want to see the gay and lesbian kids out there today to know we are fighting for? And here's what I want them to hear. I want them to hear that we do have a dream, and our dream is for full equality. And for me, the dream of full equality sounds like this. We, the gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgendered people of America, demand that the promise of our Constitution and Declaration of Independence be honored. We demand that the federal government act immediately, decisively, unequivocally to ensure equal protection under the law for LGBT people throughout the United States. Full and equal rights federally. That is the dream. You see, unfortunately, no group has ever been able to win full civil rights in this country by only fighting state by state and county by county. Even if Proposition 8 had failed in California, those marriages would not have had federal benefits. They would still be second-class marriages. I feel in my heart it's time for the gay and lesbian movement to stop asking for crumbs, to dream bigger than the Proposition 8s, and look back to the example set by the Civil Rights Act of 1964. It showed us loud and clear that full and equal civil rights can only come from the federal government. So I have a question. I have a question for our graduates today. And that is, what is the importance of the number 435 in our fight for full equality? Does anybody know? I bet you do, and you're too shy. That is the number of congressional districts in this great nation. And if we are going to win, Wherever you go after graduation, and I'm actually praying you go to one of those other 435 congressional districts. Wherever you go, you must stay active, and you must organize, and you must fight. Because the truth is, and here is our truth, that gay people of all backgrounds and political affiliations share our president's vision of a united America, and we want to work with our fellow Americans to address the critical challenges facing our great nation and our planet today. You see, we have always been willing to serve our country in our armed forces, even as we were threatened with court-martials, as teachers, even as we were slandered and libeled, as parents and foster parents struggling to support our children, as doctors and nurses caring for patients in a broken healthcare system, as artists, writers, musicians, as workers in factories, hotels, and farms and office buildings. We always served and loved our country. We have loved our country even as we have been subjected to discrimination, harassment, and violence at the hands of our own countrymen. We have loved God even as we were rejected and abandoned by religious leaders, our churches, synagogues, and mosques. We have loved democracy even as we witnessed the ballot box being used to deny us our rights. And like Barack Obama, we never abandoned hope in the American dream of equality and freedom. We never stopped believing that the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights include us. We've always kept faith with the American people, our neighbors, our coworkers, our friends and families, but today that faith is tested, and we find ourselves at this crossroad in history. The truth is, this is the civil rights fight of your generation. This is the civil rights fight of the 21st century. And I ask you this, will we move forward together? Will we affirm the American dream is alive and well? Will we finally guarantee equality under the law for all Americans? Or will we surrender to the worst, most divisive appeals to bigotry, ignorance, and fear? And I know in my heart that we won't. I have faith in the American people and the American tradition of spreading freedom. But I'm here to tell you, it will not come to those of us who wait. We must agitate. Reception. It means a lot today. I just want to say that regardless of whatever your field is, and I know we're not all in social activism fields, I know that we're doing a lot of different things here, but regardless of what your major is or your ambitions are, your dreams are, I urge you when you get to that new place to reach out to people in other communities. I urge you to come out, and I urge you to take this fight in whatever you can, in whatever way you can, to all 435 congressional districts. And when you're there in those congressional districts, you must organize and you must fight and you must share our dream of full federal equality, because we must follow in the footsteps of the Harvey Milks and Julian Bonds and Martin Luther Kings, and don't sit and wait for good things to happen. Don't sit and wait for innovation and change. Fight the status quo and don't take no for an answer, and get out and agitate and make good things happen, because it is our obligation here today. It is our obligation here today to send a message to the LGBT people in this country and in this world tonight that life is worth living. That we are fighting for their full equality from sea to sea, not partial equality in one area over another, and not equality in some distant future. I know the road will be rough and the challenges are great, but naming this dream today is so very, very important, because to all of us, it might sound like politics and policy and strategy and hard work. But to the kids out there tonight who are afraid, to those kids, it's going to sound a lot more like this. You are not less than. You have brothers and sisters, gay and straight, black and brown and white, thousands of us. And your struggle is our struggle, and your fight is our fight. And most importantly, you are loved, and there is still hope for a better tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Lance, and thank you, Peter.